You're here. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Thank God.
So we have a few people on, and I like to just get started right away because people can catch up
Do it.
um, later, or if they watch it, and they don't have to just sit here listening to us babble about nothing for a few minutes. Okay, your name's Shira, right?
Shira, Lankin, Sheps. That is my name. Yeah.
Okay. I'm Shoshana. But I want to hear a little bit about, what you do, about the Layers Project, how you got started. Um, yeah, let's do a little bit of
So
background.
basically, um, people always come to me. They ask me why, Shira, why do you always write about pain? Why is like everything on Layers about pain? It's kind of like very heavy and very intense. And I like to tell people that the Layers Project was actually born out of a place of pain, out of like a place of personal pain for me. I was sick with chronic illness for 5 years, and I was a really young person. I was like 24, 25, 26. And I was just like really deeply ashamed of being sick. Not because there was anything shameful about my illness. Fibromyalgia is not shameful. It just because I wanted to be so many things that I couldn't be. And I would look around my world, and I would look on Facebook, and I would look on Instagram, and everybody else just seemed perfect. Like there was nothing wrong and their lives were great. And I was like, okay, I'm the only one who is like really having a hard time. And that was like really hard for me. I really felt very suffocated by it. And then one day I was just like, okay, I can't live like this anymore. Like the pain of it, the pain of feeling so ashamed of it or feeling so alone was worse than the physical pain. It was somehow it was worse. And so I wrote this blog post and I said, listen, I don't know if I'll ever get better. But you may not have noticed, but I've been sick the last few years and I've been keeping it to myself, and I don't want to do that anymore. And I framed my struggle through this framework of Amuna. And I said, I don't know if I'm going to get better, but I'm gonna try and listen to the lessons that this is going to teach me. Whatever it is, this is something I have to go through, and so I'm going to be open to it. And so I hit click, and my heart is like pounding at my chest. So like a lot of people can relate to that. And my heart was like pounding, and I all of a sudden got this like flood, like a deluge of like support and love, and people sending me all these messages. Like this was like a long time ago. This was like 3-4 years ago, before it was cool to talk about like dark stuff on the internet. And I people were saying to me, hey, like I have what you have, or I don't know what's wrong with me, or I have something totally completely different, but like I've been keeping it to myself all this time, and nobody nobody knows, and I'm telling you. And I was like, wow, okay, cool. It was so powerful. It was like this thing was like lifted off of my chest. And then like from then on, I literally just walked around like, you know what's wrong with me, and that's okay. I'm okay with it. I'm not gonna be ashamed of like I'm not gonna be ashamed anymore. I just didn't want to be ashamed anymore. So two
Well,
2 days
someone
later.
wants to know what we're talking about. She's from the Layers Project, so right now we're just doing
We're talking about the birth. The birth of the Lankin project.
we're doing a little background.
That's so funny. Anyway, so 2 days later, my grandmother died. And I wrote this eulogy and I posted it on this blog that I had started. And somebody saw this eulogy and went back to the original post. And at the time, I didn't know what was wrong with me. Like we had lots of doctors and all this stuff, and like nobody ever knew. And I was like struggling and I had no treatment. And somebody looked at this post and they said, I know what's wrong with Shira. And they called up my mother, and my mother called me, and then she put me in touch with her son. And within 2 weeks of this original blog post, I had gotten an accurate diagnosis, and I started treatment, and I got better. And from my perspective, I got better because I put I put it out there, and I said, I'm not going to be ashamed of this anymore. And I was ready to listen to what Hashem had to tell me. And that was my personal avoda. That was my personal thing. I was like, okay, what's the most physical thing that I can do? What is the, like, I need to get out of the house. I need to like get moving again. I need to create. I have, you know, that like burning energy to create. And so I was like, okay, I'll be a photographer. I'll be a photographer. So I started taking pictures and I was actually pretty good at it. And I was like, okay, I really enjoyed this, but I didn't feel like I was there yet. And I said to myself, like, listen, what is this? What can I do? What can I do with all the things? Like I went to social work school before I got sick. So I'm a clinical social worker and a photographer and a writer. And I was like, well, what can I do with my life? And I had this idea. I'm like, okay, well, if this paradigm of writing a blog post and putting it on the internet.
For anybody, sorry, you're blocked out.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Let me just remind new people what we're talking about. So we're talking about the Layers Project, how it got started, a background about it, and then the idea of normalizing the conversation of mental health, sharing people's stories, the power of all that. So all that jazz.
Yeah. Anyway, long story short, one day I just like typed into my computer like, hey, would anybody be interested in like a blog about like Jewish women where I photograph them and we talk about like stigmatized topics? Would like anybody like want to do that with me? And then I got like 20 messages in the first hour and I was like, oh. Okay, we've hit on something. And that was the birth of the Layers Project.
Okay, nice. Well, Project Extreme loves what you do.
I love Project Extreme.
Okay, so recently you guys did something for Mental Health Month. Is that true?
Yeah, we did an anonymous series on mental health.
Could you talk about that a little bit? Because that's where we overlap the most in our missions.
Mm-hmm.
We could start there.
I found that number one, it's very difficult. So kudos to you to get people to talk about mental health. In our communities, there's this paradigm of needing to be perfect. And so admitting mental health to mental illness is a really serious admission. It feels very heavy because it feels like you're going to be branded in some way. And it's highly stigmatized. And we know that. For a long time, I've tried to get people to talk about mental health by writing essays, and I have been successful. But I learned, I think 6 months ago, we did a trial run where we said, okay, you know, for a long time we said like, we're not going to do any anonymous essays because it only promotes stigma. But then I discovered that there were actually other reasons to do anonymous essays. The other reasons are because sometimes there are things that just need to be said that can't be said. Because you're protecting someone's privacy, or you're protecting your family's privacy, or because it's involved somebody else that you don't really have permission to disclose. And so it was amazing was we did this mental health series and we got so many submissions, so many. And I didn't even publish a lot of them because we're very selective about what we publish because it has to be healthy for the author and healthy for the audience. And if I think that someone writes something that they're not going to get the response they want from, there's no reason for more hurt to be incurred, you know? Even just the act of writing and sending it in is a huge step.
Yeah.
It can be like really very cathartic. But back to your question, what really blew me away about the series was the struggle to accept mental illness of any kind, even if it was just generalized anxiety or depression. It was like, this can't be me. I'm not like this. I didn't used to be like this, you know. And that was profound for me to pay attention to, because I actually experienced that myself. Like the first time I felt like a panic attack. I was like, someone was like, hey Shira, you're having a panic attack. And I was like, me? Really? Is that what this looks like? And I went to social work school and I was like, what's happening to me? Am I dying? Is my heart okay? And like, it was hard for even me to be like, yes, you have anxiety. And I was like, no, not me. No. You know?
Yeah. Someone commented that they have anxiety. If that felt like that for you too, then I guess you can relate, the person who commented.
I think it might even be one of the first things that people think to themselves when they experience it for the first time, or when they're given a label of that, or when they label themselves that way as a person with anxiety or depression or however it manifests, and any kind of mental illness, it's like the first thing you say to yourself is like, okay, this is me now. Somehow I'm different. Somehow like there's something new about me that I'm discovering that I wasn't aware of, that I'm not comfortable with. And I think it takes time actually to integrate it, to navigate it, to have the tools to be okay with it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I'm curious to hear what kinds of feedback you guys got, and like, was there that same outpour of feedback that you had like with sharing about physical illness?
Totally. Yeah. I think that there was a lot of relief. Like I got a lot of messages saying like, thank you for talking about this. I really needed to hear that today. Or like people identifying, people joining, people just being like, you know how it went down for me? This is what happened to me. Or just simply people being present and reading. And sometimes those people are impacted the most because it could be new information for them. You could have an insight into life experiences that they never had or they don't know anything about. And for someone to share their story in such an intimate way and really give the details about what it meant to them emotionally, it makes it so much easier to become empathic and to understand. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Let's see. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to write them in. I think I didn't see any so far. I was trying to keep my eye on it. Here, I'll look up. Yeah, we didn't miss anything. Okay. Is there anything you want to share specifically? I made a few questions about like.
Say it again.
Is there anything you want to share about that like you think is important for people to hear?
In a general way or specifically?
Related to the topic of like normalizing, like destigmatizing, normalizing conversations around topics that are more sensitive. What kind of pushback you got, how to push through pushback?
I've gotten very little pushback. I've actually gotten just like, I don't know about you because you talk a lot of stuff too, but I got a lot of relief. Like, it's in the sense that people were relieved to hear the things that other women were saying. Every time I would start a new topic, there was kind of like a, yes, finally, someone's gonna like, it needs to be said, what I think is really great about Layers is that we're clinically staffed in the sense that I'm a clinician and I work very closely with our clinical director, Rachel Herkman, LCSW, who is phenomenal clinician. Her instincts are so on point and sharp, and she's the most empathic, sensitive, aware person I know. And so we try really hard to bring those nuances and that sensitivity to the work that we do. I mean, there's literally nothing that goes out that Rachel doesn't touch. And so we try really hard because we feel the responsibility because, I think this is a new genre. It's a new genre in the Jewish community to talk about these things. For so many years, it's been swept under the rug. And I think that, projects like you, like Project Proactive and Barry and so many others, Mic Drop, and so many others that are engaging with this really are charting territory. This is new territory, believe it or not, because it seems like so logical. Also, like all like the classic jokes about Jews, like, oh, Jews are so neurotic, Jews have anxiety. Like, yeah, we do, because we have trauma from the Holocaust and all these other things in our lives. And it's kind of shocking that actually this is uncharted territory, but it really is. And with the advent of this form of social media, we just have the ability to communicate on such a different level, on such an intimate and raw level, in safe ways. Ways that feel safe to us. And so we're really charting uncharted territories, all of us, who were even engaging in this conversation at all. And frankly, I think it's much to the benefit of the community, because these are prevalent issues. Mental illness is prevalent, period. And you can live a full and beautiful, rich, wonderful life and have mental illness of any kind. And so I think that's really the message that people need to hear. It needs to be not like a big scary thing. We need to be compassionate and empathic and sensitive and aware. And we also need tools, and we need to know how to manage it and how to live these big, beautiful, fruitful lives.
Yeah. I like that. Well said. We have a couple questions in the meantime. So someone said, how did you feel the courage to be open and out there? How did you get to that point? I think the other question was asking the same thing. Yeah.
Because I felt so suffocated by it. You know that feeling when there's just like, Brene Brown talks about shame a lot. And that there's like that feeling where like there's just something sitting on your chest and you can't bear it anymore. It feels like it's going to eat you alive. Like I just felt like all of who I was becoming subsumed in this shame, this like needless shame. It was needless, but because I wasn't the same as everybody else from my perspective, because I was different, because I was other, because I wasn't perfect, I literally just couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take it anymore. I was submitting a lot of anonymous pieces around that time because I didn't want anybody to know that it was me. Like, oh, me? No, like, if someone knows that I'm sick and I'll never get a job again, or people will look at my children funny, or whatever catastrophic thoughts that I had in my brain. And someone said to me, you have what to say, but if you don't put your name on it and stand up alongside your feelings, no one's going to listen to you. They're not going to take you seriously. Now, since then, I know that's not true. If you come out anonymously, people will take you seriously as long as it's on the right platform that people take seriously. It just has to be done in a respectful, nuanced way. People will listen. But for me, it was kind of like the kick in the pants that I needed to let it go and then like be able to like go on and live my life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's just nice that you had that insight to know that that would do it for you.
I didn't know. I just did it. Like when you're like, you're at that like point in your life where you're just like standing on a precipice and you're like, okay, well, I can't be here anymore because I'm being edged out of this space by these negative feelings. So either I can jump or there's no other option. I just had to jump. And so I did. And it sent me on this whole trajectory that I would not have anticipated, but I would have been thrilled about if I had known.
Okay, well, we have a couple more questions. Thank you. Do you ever think that people might get paranoid and think they have a mental illness even though they don't? Hey. And how do you make sure that normalizing the conversation doesn't make people believe they have a mental illness or feel left out for having a mental illness? That's a really good question.
Unpack that for a second. How people make them think they have a mental illness.
Yeah. So how do you make sure that normalizing the conversation, doesn't make people believe that they have a mental illness or feel left out for having mental illness when it becomes such a hot topic? Then
why would they feel left out if it was a hot topic?
If they don't have a mental, I don't know. I'm off.
Yeah, I think that if you don't have a mental illness, you're not going to feel left out of having mental illness. But I do think that to address the first half of the question, remind me the first half for a second.
Okay.
I'm making them think. Well, listen, you run the risk when you talk about anything. Anytime you read something, whether it's something medical, like, I stopped watching medical TV shows because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have that thing that I saw on Grey's Anatomy. There are just certain personalities that tend to that. And actually those personalities have to be a little bit more anxious in general, I think. I don't think that people imagine mental illness so much. And mental illness, there's a spectrum, a very, very wide spectrum, where you can have some generalized anxiety, or you could have some, you know, more acute anxiety or some phobias or a panic disorder or the all the way, you know, to a more severe end of the spectrum. So I think that people just have to know themselves. I think that if you suspect that you might struggle with some mental illness, check in with a good therapist in your area and explore, you know, find out what are the things that concern you, what are the things that are manifesting for you. I don't think that it's a bad thing to check in with your mental health, because again, it's a spectrum and it's far more common than you think. I think, you know, most of the people in my life have some form of anxiety or another, for good reason, because we're humans and we're built a certain way, and the way that we function today, with technology and, you know, the very fast speed of our lives today, like the breakneck speed of our lives, is actually not what we were built to do. Our bodies were not built to function this way. And so, we actually could manifest anxiety. But that doesn't mean that we're mentally ill. And even if we were mentally ill, there's nothing wrong with that. You can be someone who experiences mental illness and, again, live a beautiful and full life, healthy life. So there's no need to be afraid. If you feel, you know, if you feel creepings of concern that maybe you need to check in with somebody, then check in with somebody. And that's normal and that's good and healthy.
We also talk a lot about the difference between mental health and mental illness. We have like other lives about that and how everybody has mental health. It's always good to, like, you know, be working on your mental health as opposed to mental illness, which is more, you know, has
Sure.
like more guidelines and you check the boxes.
Further on the spectrum.
Right. Yeah.
Great.
But everyone has brain.
Yes, we do. And things are going to set us off. Things are going to stress us out. Like, our lives are imperfect and they're complicated. And there are going to be moments of life where we feel anxious or we feel down. And there's no shame in that. And the more that we can accept it, the more we can integrate it and seek help for it and resolve it if we can do that. And so, yeah, it's always good to check in with yourself.
Okay, well, we I don't have any other questions, but let's say someone wanted to write for you or connect with you, or how, like, what's that process like?
Very easy. So send us a message on Instagram or on Facebook. You can send me an email at shira@thelayersprojectmagazine.com. We have forms online on our website. We have an anonymous form where you literally can just type up an essay somewhere and then just plop it in and send it. And we have no idea who sends it to us. People send me messages all the time. Oh, can you give a message to the girl who wrote so-and-so essay? And I'd be like, really, I can't. I have no idea who it was, because we get these like really great. So it's really, honestly, when I say anonymous, it really is anonymous. Yeah. So, or you could send me a message privately on Facebook or Instagram. I'm always happy. We're always taking new stories, and we're always interested to hear what people have to say when they're ready to talk.
Okay, so for whoever's watching, if you hear that and you want to share your story and tell your friends, then connect with Shira and the Layers Project. Yeah, I'm done with my questions. So
it was great to talk to you.
We'll end now, and everybody have a great rest of your day in Israel night.
Yes, it's 7:30 here.
Okay. All right. Take care.
Take care. Thanks so much.
Thanks for
Bye,
joining, Shira.
Bye.